Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 48, and we are going to ask, what is a libertarian? And basically, the conclusion is it is one way out of the box. Just as a reminder, you can find this podcast on Rumble, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and probably a couple of other places. But that's usually where most people will go. All right. Anyway, so why this topic? Well, I saw a kind of debate between different camps within libertarianism, and I thought I would throw my take, the subjective professor's take, on the term. And first, we got to say, and this is using the ideas I introduced in episode 8, libertarian is just simply a racialization. And racialization, as I have defined it to mean, is just simply a generalization or a creation of a category based on an identifiable characteristic. In this case, libertarian, the word, right? And so a lot of people will self-identify as libertarian. And when they do that, they're basically inhabiting a category. So depending on your perspective, your experience with the term, and people who have called themselves libertarian, you'll probably understand the term differently according to the people that you've met or talked with before. Personally, I never really knew about this category until let's see, 12 years ago, right? So I spent most of my life not even hearing the term libertarian. And so pretty much I didn't identify as a Demrepublican or a Republican. And so I was sort of a political orphan, if you will. And as most of you know, I stumbled on the free market and started following, just the ideas of what would happen if you had no government, right? You had freedom. What would keep you accountable? Oh, responsibility, right? Consequences of choices. Okay. So then where would we go? And one thing led to another, and I was consuming videos like, no, I was like a candy holic, right? So the videos were candy, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And so then I realized I was a libertarian. I remember I came home one day and I said to my wife, I said, I think we're libertarian. And she asked me what that was. And I said, I don't know. I got to do some more research. That was 12 years ago. But anyway, so most people will, when they try to figure out what libertarian is, they think of the person that they met who introduced the term to them. And then they racialize everybody else as somehow similar to that individual. Now, sometimes if you like that introduction, then you're going to be like, oh, okay, you have a favorable view of libertarians. But if your first couple of encounters with libertarians were kind of like made you want to lock your doors at night, well, then you're probably not going to have a favorable view of libertarians. But see, that's the thing. Most people will generalize based on the limited experience that they have with that category. All right. And so if you were one of those people who tuned into Libertarian National Presidential Convention and you saw, I guess, what is it, the vice chair of the party stroll out to the podium completely nude, you may not have a very favorable impression of libertarians. Some people know libertarians as the dope smokers, right? People who love smoking pot, marijuana, and fight to have it decriminalized or legalized or whatever the term people are using now. A lot of libertarians that you meet may have been atheists. And so if you have some religion, some traditional religion in your life, then they generally, the first thing they'll do is blast that, right? Get that religion out of you. But so depending on, because within that umbrella of libertarian, there are so many different people. But generally, and in my reset perspective, approach to things. A libertarian is just someone who wants limited government, right? But then there's the rub, right? How much? A little? None? Or even how much is a little? How much is too much? And so there it becomes extremely subjective. And so there are so many varieties, just like there are so many varieties of Christianity, you know, usually even within the same church, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to find two people who believe the same exact things. Some people, if they're in love, they're going to pretend that they do. Sorry, I just had to slip that in there. But for the most part, I mean, if you really dig down deep, no two people have the same set of beliefs, and often you'll discover this when you have to live together, go through life together, have all these different experiences together, and then the differences come out, okay? And that's when you have debate, that's when you have arguments. But a lot of people want to debate what are the core beliefs, what should be the core beliefs of, like, say, the Libertarian Party or the political movement. If we're going to call ourselves libertarian, then you have to subscribe to these beliefs. Otherwise, you're not a true libertarian, and it becomes very religious, and I've demonstrated, I guess, or I tried to discuss in an earlier episode, I believe it's episode 6 or something, where I tried to make the case that everything is religion. To believe in anything, whether it's a political party, a scientific theory, it's going to be a religious belief, right? You're going to accept it as true, and now you're going to use it to make future decisions, and it functions as a kind of morality. All right, well, the dictionary definition of libertarian is an advocate or supporter of a political philosophy that advocates only minimal state intervention, right? So minimal government in the free market and the private lives of citizens. Okay, that's really important. So I'll say it again. An advocate or supporter of a political philosophy that advocates only minimal state intervention in the free market and private lives of citizens. Now, we have to, I don't think I need to explain that the free market, the public sphere, and the private lives of citizens are two different domains, right? So that'll become significant as we go through this episode. So anyway, libertarian, that is just simply the approach to society. It's not the responsibility of the government to do much of anything, really, because if government does anything, what would that be, right? And so people will debate this all day long, right? And but that's pretty much what the debate is. All the different varieties of libertarian is basically, right? So if you ever see two libertarians arguing with each other, it comes down to that. Like, what does the government do? How much should they do it, right? And how should they go about doing it, right? It's pretty much this, right? And so basically it's like arguing, I don't know who the greatest athlete in a specific sport would be, right? And so everyone has their opinion and they have their reasons for believing it, but does everyone really have to agree? I don't know. And so because it is a large, broad generalization, just like race or racial categories, everyone shares a single characteristic, but when you dig down a little bit, they're all individuals. And so also in the libertarian generalization, you have everyone is basically different. You got left libertarians, right libertarians, and you got, religious libertarian, everything you can possibly think of. Scientific libertarians, atheist libertarians, you got everything in there, right? So basically, all the different kinds of people, you just stick libertarian on it. And yeah, there's a version of that as well. So my theory is that you got all of these different, subjectivities because if you grow up in the two-party system, generally you're dissatisfied, right? And most people get frustrated so that they're politically disinterested. That's like 40% of the country. It might be a little bit less now because of all the propaganda that we're encountering, right? And people saying you have to choose a side, you know, that kind of thing. But the reality is that most people are politically, you know, disinterested. And if they are forced to choose, then they look for an issue that they can agree on. And if their subjectivity is not affirmed, or they can't find it in either party, well, generally they might find it in the Libertarian Party. And they say, oh, well, neither party is seeking, you know, this, if we go back a few years, neither party is really pushing the end of the drug war. Oh, but libertarians are, so I'll join that party because I like that idea. But they come into the party still with all of their other moral subjectivities, right? And so that's where you get all the division. So all these people see something that they could identify with or help them in their own personal subjectivity, but only in that one plank, if you will, in that one issue. But everything else, you still have a lot of variety. So people join the Libertarian Party for their own personal moral crusade or their personal political goal. But if you think about it, that's a personal thing, right? So that's the private life component. So libertarians as a whole will agree that government really should tone it down. Okay, I'll get to my own personal take on it at the end in about 5 minutes. But really everything else is a personal thing. And I think that if everyone was allowed to pursue what they wanted to pursue privately without any fear of repercussion, surveillance, you know, canceling or any of this stuff, then, you know, most people wouldn't care at all. So if there is a burden or a calling or a perceived need, then a person would just run with it, right? Like you see someone who's poor and they need some help. Well, nothing's stopping you from helping that person, right? In a free society, right? You just help the person. You don't say, wow, this person here needs help. I got to go to the government, you know, and, you know, campaign and stump for a few years so that maybe someone will help this family that needs help right now. No, that's not how it works, right? You see someone who needs help, you help them now, right? And you try to figure out how to get them the help that they need, right? Specific to their situation. And you do that without government. I mean, just imagine if someone in your family has a crisis or has a problem, then you do what you can right now to help them right now with whatever means or tools or resources that you have right now. And if it's a good idea, if what you have decided to do is a good idea and other people see what you did, then they'll either help you or they'll participate or they will mimic you, right? They'll repeat what you did with the people that they know. And if not, you would think it's a great idea, or it might have worked in your situation, but who's to say that it is forever the best way to handle that situation? And who's to say that other people have to do it that way, right? Because remember, everyone's subjectivity is going to be different. And so you should give people the freedom to try it, to try to resolve it in their way. But that's the private life. I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but back in the day when I was younger, like a child in the 60s and 70s, no one cared what you did behind closed doors, right? No one cared. It was no one's business, basically. And that was the joke when I was a kid, when you could, if you did drugs on the street, you were arrested. But if you did drugs in your house, then who cares, right? So privacy was just really, really important. And obviously with CBDCs and all this other stuff that the government is trying to do with the surveillance and the monitoring and all this other kind of stuff, you know, that privacy is gone, right? But that's a topic for another episode. But really what most libertarians are debating in the public convention forum are private life issues, right? More or less. So I will joke and I'll say, I'm socially liberal, right? So in the classroom, yeah, it doesn't matter how crazy someone says is, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect my decisions, how I'm going to do it. For myself, when I hear other people's ideas and subjectivities, I'm like, huh, so someone does believe that that's possible, or someone does want to do that. And for me, it just becomes filed as data, right? But as I've often said in class, at home, I co-rule with my wife, right? I co-rule like a fascist dictatorship, right? And people are shocked. They're like, wow, you said the word fascist. But think about it, right? My kids do not own the means of production. They don't work. They don't determine what the menu for dinner is, right? Maybe sometimes we'll offer them a vote, but they don't tell us where to shop. They don't tell us what we should teach them, what morality we should try to convey on them. That's our decision as parents. And we can do that because we are responsible for our children, right? So it's funny because a lot of people say, oh, parents are, like if you see a shooting or some kind of problematic child, then they blame the parents, right? So, oh, you didn't raise them right, or something like that. But most people will only talk about that when they see something wrong. So what does that mean? The assumption is that it is the responsibility of the parents to raise their children in the right way, whatever that right way may be, right? And so since people are going to blame me if there's a problem or something goes wrong, so then leave me alone when I try to raise my kids in the way that I think is best. Now, some of you might say, oh, but that'll just be an excuse for child abuse. No, because there are consequences for that as well. Look, I say I'm a fascist dictator, right, at home. But if I want lifelong relationship with my children, then I have to treat them fairly, right? I cannot abuse my position and my authority. Otherwise, when they turn, I don't know, 16 or old enough to run away, they'll run away, and I don't want that. And so I have to raise them and conduct my dictatorship in such a way that they would want to have a lifelong relationship with me. And plus, the goal of my dictatorship is to make them independent, right? Not dependent on me. And so I have to teach them the things that they need to know to be able to live an independent life. And so I am restrained and restricted by the consequences, by the results of what I decide to do along with my wife. Now, people will watch other families, each other, and then they'll say, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. And so they can make adjustments. I always tell my students that they should observe honestly how their parents are acting, how it affects them, how it makes them feel, and then use that as a reference that if one day they have kids, they'll know what to do, what not to do, what you remembered taking advantage of and twisting it to your own advantage so you can do things that you're really not allowed to do, but by twisting the words, you can do it this way. So are you the type to try to take advantage of other people's goodwill, or are you going to make that part of the education that you are going to give to your children, right? If you have children, anyway. And so then you come up with a method and an approach. At least that's what I did, right, for my kids. And all of that, of course, went out the window when I actually did have kids, right? So that's something also to keep in mind. As society develops and we trade with others, and what that means is you get jobs with other people or you hire people to do things for you at your house, then problems arise. And when they do, we resolve them organically because most of the situations will be unique. So if security is a problem, then you'll hire a security company. Maybe a lot of people in your same neighborhood will hire the same security company, right? And maybe there'll be competing security companies offering certain perks for a low fee, whatever. And then you continue to have and employ that security force because they keep you safe. They keep your neighborhood safe. They keep your community safe, right? And so you can monitor them, and you track and hold them accountable for how safe you are. Okay. Also, if you have disputes with your neighbors, we can have private courts. You don't need a government court. You can have, private arbitration, arbitration, which is what I'm going through right now with my former employer university, right? Like I think they didn't renew my contract fairly under fair circumstances. And so then I file a grievance, right? And so I go through arbitration. And so a third party, I guess, judge comes in and then decides, what should happen, right? And so that we already have private courts, right? We just have to make it more available for more people. And you'll find that the expenses for private courts will be much, much lower. So there it is, right? So all a libertarian is someone who believes in freedom, right? So government doesn't have to intrude into our lives. We have the ability, we have the tools, we have the minds to be able to resolve the issues that come up in our lives. And even if we personally don't have access to that knowledge and experience, we can always look around to other people, ask other people. We have the internet now. So you can just go on the internet, go find a forum, find a place where people exchange ideas. And then you can, YouTube, a lot of things now, if something breaks in the house, I go to YouTube first, see if there's a easy how-to video, how to fix it. And then I try to fix it myself that way, right? And so we have all of this knowledge, information, all of these tools at our fingertips. So we can even probably resolve a lot of the issues that come up in our lives, right? And so this debate of, are you left libertarian, right libertarian? See, that's people bringing in their personal religion, their personal sense of morality, their subjective perspective to a conversation. Leave that private. If you really believe strongly about a certain social issue, you do something about it, right? You start an organization, you start a charity. And if it's a great idea, then other people will join you, other people will donate to you, other people will fund your activities. And maybe if it's not that great of an idea, or there's just not that much of a need for it, then there won't be that much public interest. And that's how we can measure if something is a good idea or not. That's it for this episode. I think in the future, I'll come back and talk about anarcho-capitalism, perhaps, maybe even in the next episode. But anyway, so what are anarchists? What are anarcho-capitalists? That kind of thing. Well, that's for another episode, but hopefully that's enough for you to get an orientation of what libertarianism is. So I will talk to you in the next episode.